Hello, everyone. Welcome again to another ConsenSys Cypherpunk Hackathon workshop. Today, we are here again with Matt Wright doing another workshop for us. And this time it's about bootstrapping your online community or building online communities and actually building more engaging online communities, if you will. So just a quick housekeeping around Crowdcast, which is the platform we're using today. This might be old hat for anybody who's been attending workshops, but I'll just do it for the newbies. On the right-hand side is the chat that you can chat with us throughout the workshop. If you have any questions that you'd like Matt to answer, it's best to get it on our radar by putting it in the ask a question queue on the bottom there. If you start to type in a question and put a question mark, and before you hit return in the chat, it'll pop up a little orange button that will say, hey, do you want to add this to the queue? The reason why adding it to the queue is good is because that'll give us a chance to see that there's a question waiting rather than missing it in the chat. Also, it gives us a chance to pull you up onto screen and onto stage if you'd like to ask the question yourself to Matt, which is really nice too sometimes. We can also specifically record that answer if you queue it up. And other people can upvote a question. It just kind of gives priority, lets Matt know that that's something that a lot of people are wondering about. Also, there's a little green button that says workshop, see more workshops, and sign up for the hackathon. So that links to our Confluence page, which has all the details about this hackathon event, including the workshops, the actual hackathon event itself. There's still time to sign up to participate in Hackathon Week, which is June 7th through the 11th. There's also a few more workshops that you can RSVP, so definitely check those out. If you want to watch any of the replays or any of the slide decks for all the workshops that we've had here, you can access those there. Just know that every workshop is available at the exact same link that they aired on. So today, this will be available for replay pretty much within 5 minutes after it airs, which is really great. So yeah, basically, and the final thing is, of course, if you're not already there, please join us on the ConsenSys Hackathon 2021 Slack channel. That's where we will be posting all the latest and greatest about the event. If you're interested in hacking and you need assistance with teaming up or just understanding how to participate, we'll help you there and we'll guide you. So just let us know and ping us on that channel. All right, I'm Shay, and without further ado, I'll hand the mic over to Matt.
Thank you, Shay. Is my audio good? Can you hear me?
Yes, sorry, clicked it out.
No, I always
my bad.
Double check. I always have to double check. I can't
for some reason.
I can't see myself on this. I'm just looking at my deck, so I'm hoping I'm good. But yeah, thank you everyone for joining. My name is Matt, as Shay mentioned. I'm at ConsenSys working on our developer community with DevRel and also with ConsenSys Quorum. I previously was at JP Morgan working on our developer community with enterprise Ethereum developers. And then even previous to that, I worked for a small hackathon company called Angel Hack, where we organized around 200 hackathons a year and worked with developers in 65 different countries. So I did a lot of work with developer communities in various different cultures and contexts and software stacks. So had quite a career in this space and very passionate about it. Been interesting to see where it's going, where it's headed, and to see all the interest in community development as well. So yeah, thanks for joining. We'll dive into it. So first things first, to frame up community, because there's plenty of ways to cut it. It's simple down to like this quote. It's building an audience is helping people, but building a community is helping people help others. And I think this really is an umbrella for a lot of the community efforts from the beginning of humankind to what we're doing with online communities now. And we'll take a look into how some of these frameworks have worked over time and how we're seeing a lot of these similar trends, and then we'll go and dive deep into how in present day a lot of these online communities are collaborating. So what is community by definition? There's a nice quote by Levin Wegner. It's a publication that was researching communities and more of the offline context and in community development as a social impact route. But it's that group who share a common interest and desire to learn from and contribute to the community with a variety of their experiences. And so like we're seeing communities being defined as a social unit. It's a group of living things with commonalities such as norms, religion, value, customs, identity, sense of place in most cases. We also see a more stronger culture with affiliations. So some folks have really close ties to nationality, culture, creed, locale. Virtual communities are now a thing. And then you can also break it down into formal versus informal. So a lot of times you will see in society, we'll see official membership or administration or some sort of patronage, like Doctors Without Borders, or even you'll see informal communities that are just tied by shared values and commitments. I'd say Ethereum has a really good sense of that, where we're all collectively coming under the same mission and looking to accomplish the same goals without any central organization. This is a fun slide. So community development is not new. I think we get really hung up on, the terms of, community manager this, community lead that in Web3. But for this context, community is just been redefined in various ways. So again, starting from like the beginning of humankind, this is, you really need to think of how humans interact with one another. Like this is at the root of what it is. And over time, we've been able to do this more efficiently and doing different mediums. And so you could even consider Jesus Christ being a community manager at some point. Gandhi took a lot of ideals from his time in South Africa with the Swaraj movement in India. He had a lot of community development principles. We can even think back to when mainframe computing was kicking off in the 70s. And we had time sharing and the development of basic programming where you could essentially share computing environments. And this really stepped up how we collaborated in an efficient manner. We've got Barack Obama here on the far right, who was a community organizer in Chicago before his political career really took off. And we'll dive into a quote that he was quoted in a bit. But his role was really listening to the people and responding to that, which is at its core what community development is. We also have on the far left on here, IRC, so Internet Relay Chat. If any of you were, building in the early 90s or just playing around with the internet, this was the way to chat online and still is for a lot of open source software projects, developers in general. So this has made the whole process of community development more efficient. This just looks like a band, but this is actually inside of an Apple store. Apple in the 90s started what they called Apple Masters, which was like an ambassador program. They also were notorious for starting Apple user groups. So when they were first starting out, they would, bring groups of developers together to really refine their products and give direct feedback. And then here we have Ethereum magicians, ETH cat herders, and all core devs essentially assembling at DevCon and discussing, the Ethereum roadmap. And so we're seeing these developer communities come together in different formats, but in all, it's they're doing the same activities. They're listening and they're responding. Lastly, is kind of the future, and how I see it is, we're all working digitally we're all working virtually and remote. This is Meta Cartel on one of their town halls. Meta Cartel is a DAO, if anyone isn't familiar, and they're finding more efficient ways to not only communicate what the community's needs are, but to also to delegate governance, to be able to vote on that, and to efficiently have a native currency that helps them make these decisions. And all in software. So we're seeing some really interesting movement in the space. It's a growing field.
Yeah. Oh, can I chime in on what you're saying? So computing, yeah, and absolutely. I think the trend kind of happened. It's like a natural human like tendency and desire because especially around like a common activity, right? So developer communities, like gaming was a big thing because it's like you're interacting with your peers in a way that you're learning, where typical product customer support, let's say from like businesses or big business, it was just kind of no face, really kind of this cold interaction. But it's almost like we learn from each other and also from collaborating with each other. It's like when you want to be a musician and you want a band, you find other people and like, this is your community. And it's like, about opportunities, about events. And it kind of is like a friendly way for everybody to learn and kind of grow that particular area of interest. And so, yeah, I think that we're coming back to how important community is in terms of like brands trying to engage their audience, because it's more grassroots. And I think that's way more effective because you don't come off like salesy, when you're actually allowing people to kind of say, hey, and also what great feedback, right? UX feedback, that's a perfect place. So anyway, I just wanted to chime in that's why I love that community is coming back around full circle.
No, it's awesome. No, and there's so many different instances where if you unbundle it, communities like the fibers of between all these activities in an organization, whether it's a formal organization or if it's just a group of people collectively doing something in its roots. You're creating communities and sub-communities to execute tasks and coordinate. So it's really interesting to see where this is going. And obviously it's been an interest to enterprise and to technology specifically, because you're able to efficiently iterate on these feedbacks. And so it's a very fast growing field. If you go on LinkedIn, this is just a silly screenshot, but this blows my mind every day. Like I am the luckiest person. My title is community manager or community lead, and I get to talk to people all day. Like it's quite incredible. And to see this, when I was exiting college, like community manager was not an option. That wasn't something I looked up to be. So it's usually, and I speak to a lot of community managers, they all kind of stumble into the same space. No one went to school for it. It just, it's natural human tendency, and you really can wrap it around any industry. But we're seeing a huge trend in technology and in the web, for example. Cool. So just to, this is very, very simplified. Like obviously, like the internet, there's a lot more going on, and its history is much more dynamic than this. But just to get a quick scope of what we saw in Web 1 versus Web 2, and we're looking forward to for Web 3, we can break the community down into three verticals: forum, chat, content, and then we're even seeing some governance play into Web 3. For forums, in early 90s, we were usually communicating through bulletin boards, IRC, and prior to this, other ways for the computer science community to communicate with mainframe technology. But really, it started in Web 2. We started seeing open source WordPress sites coming out where people can create their own blogs in a more open format where you can build your own community. We saw vast improvements in internet speed and throughput with instant messaging, chat rooms. We even saw digital communities and marketplaces. So imagine like Airbnb or meetup.com. And then we started getting even faster. Like we started getting, with Web 2, we started seeing like more, like the user became the content. We saw faster multimedia. YouTube communities are created around YouTube creators. Gaming, as Shay mentioned, we're seeing vast improvements of the way we collect online. And right now, one of the biggest projects I think we could attribute to community that we're using at ConsenSys is through VoIP and digital media distribution apps. So like imagine Discord or Telegram or WeChat or WhatsApp. Even Instagram, like, we're constantly messaging on different platforms, and I'm sure I'm not alone, but I have like 7 different chat platforms that I use on a daily basis. And it's quite ridiculous, but it's also, if you look back 10 years ago, it's really incredible where we've come. And, we have calls with folks in like 20 different countries every single day. And, that kind of collaboration just was not possible previously to the way the web was structured. And we're just, and there's no date and time when this shifted. It just slowly became much more usable for building communities. And so we have all kinds of tools now.
Matt, I was going to say, actually, I feel like there was a little bit of a shift in this direction last year. I think there was like an
That too.
expediting us moving into these digital communities. I mean, think about it. Slack is actually a community now for a lot of people. A lot of people use that as a space to collaborate. I mean, obviously we do here, but then also things like Telegram and you know, so you have this, but it's like interesting how much people quickly adapted because out of need, and then because it was that desire for connection when we really were struggling with connection. So again, that's what community does. It keeps people feeling like they're not alone in this, whether it's like a support group or whether it's like a you know, a knowledge group. But yeah, just thought that was interesting because I do feel like there was a little bit of a speed up last year.
Thank you. Thank you for that. 100% true. I would even say, like, I guess I didn't even put it, but yeah, no, this these tools that we've
willing to adopt it, basically, right? Much more open.
Well, like these tools we've all kind of come to use a lot, like Google Hangouts and Zoom. Like they've been around, but yeah, we 10x the adoption throughout COVID. And you know, I've been somewhat of a digital nomad
on an enterprise level, right?
Even on the enterprise level, like JP Morgan adopted Zoom. Like while I was there, when I was at JP Morgan, and I was remote, they were like, we'll never have remote employees. And now they have to be remote and they have Zoom. It's like all this craziness.
For Slack.
So when people are kind of forced to innovate, luckily we had the tools, we had the timing for it, but it's insane to see, you know, folks have been digital nomads and like working remote for a long time, but to see it now mainstream definitely accelerated, community development. And so this is kind of what we're seeing in like for the future of this stuff. Is you know, for Web3, we're looking to obviously decentralize a lot of this process. We're looking to have more permissioning or more autonomy for users, more self-custody of your data, a native internet currency, and all the things we preach at Ethereum and ConsenSys. And then also we're moving into this terrain, which we really haven't seen that effectively, is governance. You know, like I guess you could attest open source projects to the largest part of governance that we've seen in terms of like web coordination and just coordination of work. But DAOs and governance platforms are really changing the game. So I'm very excited to see how this alters online communities in the future. Cool. So I was just giving some context on communities in a nutshell. Very, very broad, but what I want to dive into is just, you know, how our approaches for building communities, how I've, you know, previously approached building communities, and just give you all some tools or some like ideas in case you're building your own communities around either if it's a software or if it's you know, a new product, or you know, even your local coffee shop. Like, you know, it's pretty applicable to all frameworks. All right, so first thing we start with is discovery, or really listening to your audience. You want to see if you have like any existing community artifacts, if there's like an existing culture. You want to see if there's any native platforms for this community. For example, I built a lot of developer communities in mainland China, and you cannot build anything there online without WeChat. So understanding that is a huge cultural shift that you need to listen to those existing communities. Principles is your next step. You want to establish key activities. You want guidelines, some sort of governance. You want to like allocate the channels in which people are going to communicate or interact with one another. And you want to have incentives aligned. This is probably the most important facet of what you'll be doing is incentive alignment. So understanding like who these humans are, what drives them, what kind of principles do they align to for this community, and how do you activate that? You'll go ahead and you'll start building those materials or those channels, those FAQs. We've launched an ambassador program at ConsenSys that was a bit of a programming that we wanted to use to activate the community. You can then evangelize your community. So there's like this funnel of, which I'll show you later. You get someone engaged with your mission. You know, you support them, and then you're looking to evangelize them. You want to flip them into someone that starts talking about your community on your behalf, and become the stakeholder themselves. That's how you see true scale. And we, are able to do this more efficiently. Once you're at this point, you can start figuring out how you can iterate quicker from discovery to evangelism. So you start turning everyone in your community into an evangelist, essentially. That's when we see true scale through humans and through human interaction. And then, if you have the luxury of it, it's important to respond, to measure this traction, to create direct feedback loops. So, working groups are really nice, or surveys, anything that allows you to have a direct feedback line with your community. And then the closer you can, bring your feedback loops from your response time, the more effective and more engaged your community is going to be, because they feel like they're listened to. Cool. You can't talk about community without talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is, probably if you're taking like business classes, this is, you've probably gone through this. But starting from the bottom, every human needs, they have psychological needs, so food, water, warmth, rest. They have safety needs, security, a home. You have belongingness and love needs, so you need relationships, friends, family. Goes to esteem, so you want to have this feeling of accomplishment, some sort of prestige, or just something you're proud of. And then at the final pinnacle, you have self-actualization. So you feel like you're achieving your true potential. You lived your life to the fullest. If you don't have one of these boxes checked, it's really hard to attain the need above it. And so this is essentially where we kind of define incentives with human beings. Is it's really tough, especially in blockchain. Like we think a lot about how do we how do we get someone to use MetaMask in this third world country. It's like, if they're starving, they don't have food and water, they don't feel like safe, like their government's not a stable environment. It's really hard to think about building something in Web3, or it's really hard to feel like you're a contribution to the space. So it really does take like understanding what these levels are and how we can at least help activate these. And usually with the community programming that we use, we probably focus mainly on like the top three. We really try and make people feel like they're welcome inside of communities. We like to make sure that people feel comfortable. There's different levels of member roles in the community. So you can go from a lurker, like someone who's just kind of sitting on the sidelines, trying to figure out what's going on, all the way to, like an elder, like someone who's been around the community for a while. They're comfortable saying whatever they want. They know the relationship of everyone in the space. They're not scared to go jump in and post something. Whereas you might have folks that are a little more timid, and you have to really give them this belongingness and like this care. And then, once you get that accomplished, it's like, how do you make them feel accomplished? And then if you want to turn them into an evangelist, it's like, how do we make them feel like they're on a mission? And so you got to really think through these things. And I put a cool quote up here from this article on Barack Obama's career in community development. And I won't read through it necessarily. You can go ahead and read it. But essentially, he would go door to door and just listen for hours to people in the community. And so he would understand what made them tick. He would understand, what their true needs were. Instead of just asserting this is the answer, this is what you should care about. He wanted to understand truly what the community was in dire need of, and just how they thought, like where they sat on this hierarchy of needs. And so it's really important with community development. We do this quite often. I sit on calls all the time with developers, and just trying to understand what drives them, especially in different regions and from different cultures. Good tools for understanding this community. You should dive into a community canvas. It's very similar to Lean Canvas. It helps you kind of break down the purpose of your community, what the values are, how do you define success, what is the identity of an individual in your community, what is the experience you want them to go through, what are the roles, and with roles you want to create say you have like 5 tiers, for example, you want to create a path for people to, the more time they spend, they can actually move up the ladder. And there's like provable credit for them doing that. So in our ambassador program or in Discord, we are aiming to move people to Evangelize, and then we start minting NFTs for folks that are like, contributing more in the space. There's nothing worse than contributing, your life's work to a project and not getting anything in return, no recognition, no pat on the back. So it's super important that you create these roles and the definition of how you get to these points. And it has to feel exclusive. It has to feel like this was earned. It was special to be a contributing member of the community. Rules are very important. If your members don't feel safe in their community, they will leave. They're not going to be engaged. They're going to be very scared to comment on anything. This has happened a lot in open source projects. Linux, I've heard notoriously the PHP community is quite aggressive, back in the day at least. And yeah, it's a bummer because it's if you are more engaging and more inviting to newbies and even to like current members, it helps you really build retention over time. And then yeah, so that's Community Canvas. I would look into that if you are building a community yourself. It's really interesting. You can just Google it. I also can send you the PDF if you want it. And then, as we mentioned previously, community interviews and user groups. This is like a frequent. This is just a frequent activity you need to participate in, whether you're doing one-on-one interviews or you have a dedicated group that meets up at a certain time of the month. It's super important for online communities to have this this culture, but like this ritual of meeting up, because it all comes down to this human sense of belonging and of ritual. And so the more you can create that, the more you're listening to your community, the better off you will be. The second stage would be building your foundation for growth. So you want to set these principles. You want to have a vision, goals, ideals, a mission. You also establish guidelines. So I mentioned you want to make sure people feel safe. We have code of conduct. There's also a ton of open source code of conducts for communities. We have a community guideline, community guidelines doc. There's a few ways that you can establish the rules for folks. And people, although they might say they don't like rules, rules are helpful to at least set precedent. And if someone's misbehaving in your community, you can just refer to the rules. You don't have to make it weird. You can just be like, hey, check the rules. This is our code of conduct. This is how we roll. You also want to set places. So have your dedicated channels, or like for us, we have Discord. That's where we gather. I know folks that do this, build communities in Telegram, WeChat, WhatsApp, Messenger. There's all kinds of places you can build these communities. Discourse. You want to have a source of knowledge, so a place where people can, index content, refer to commonly asked questions. You want to have activities. So on top of content, you want to have events and initiatives and even working groups where folks can get together and collaborate. It's something that you can invite people to, and it gives your community a reason to grow. So if you have someone that's like really passionate about what you're doing and they're an evangelist, the best thing you can do is set up a basic event, and have this person go and invite as many people as they can to it. That's very, very vague, but that's what we do every day. We try and set up events, whether they're voice channels or voice events in Discord, or if they're meetups. You want to task your community with these types of activities so they make it their own. And then roles, yeah, we mentioned, but you want to start activating people and pushing them up to higher roles in the community, so that at some point you can even delegate governance. So we have a lot of ambassadors at ConsenSys that are taking on a lot of responsibility that could be an employee's job, but we want the community to really take over and be the source of all this activity. And then, so yeah, this kind of circles back to Maslow's, we want to evangelize and we want to incentivize folks. And so you can think about incentives as non-fiscal rewards. So right now we use swag. We also use like shout outs. Just a simple thank you to someone that contributes goes a long way. There's various different ways that you can put a carrot in front of somebody and get them motivated. Even access to content for ConsenSys. One of the incentives for the ambassadors are that we help market their meetups, and we also provide decks on like current trends. And so for them, it's great that they get to tout ConsenSys in their local communities. They get to be the ConsenSys person there, and it's like a badge of honor. So you got to find those non-fiscal rewards that really motivate people, because sometimes it's not just money, and that's the whole point of this program. Accomplishments. So you want to, again, like give shout outs to folks that have been the super contributors for the community. You want to help boost their esteem for being super supportive of everyone in the space. Rapport. A lot of our ambassadors are like being ConsenSys ambassadors simply to network. They want to be able to say that they work with ConsenSys, that they're close to Ethereum ecosystem, they're learning. It goes a long way when you can even put newbies in the space that are we basically want to create rapport. We want to help people feel belonging, that they're doing their job. So I'm about to get a cough.
Yeah,
I think I'm talking too much.
Should I give you a break with
No. I felt a cough coming on, so I'm good.
Okay.
Just want to cough in everyone's ear. And then last is self-actualization. So like we do have a lot of folks in the community that are participating in our Discord because they're looking for a career. Like they want to network with folks and understand what roles are in the space. For a lot of these developers, they're new to Web3. They've come out of ConsenSys Academy. They're looking for different projects they can work on, and just contributing in the space and building things for other people. It helps them kind of understand where they think they fit in and where they belong. So this is also another way to evangelize your community. I've introduced people to a lot of other folks, and it's huge for them just to like start learning about the space, understand where they fit in. So self-actualization is the final pinnacle where you try and find people that place they need to be. So support. You need to maintain support, obviously, for your community. If you don't, your community will essentially kind of lose its luster. Engagement's a huge driver for retention. And there's different ways to achieve this. So, content, just constantly pushing out content, communicating with your community on what's new, what's coming up, what's been done, and then also setting up even video chat or voice chat to answer any core questions. I think is very important. And then again, like with a lot of these different chat platforms, you can set up all these different subgroups and channels where you can see an even further drive of engagement, and we've even been able to delegate a lot of the support from our community. It's taking a long time, but communities take time to build. It takes a very long time to build culture. It's not something you can do overnight. But we've got 50 ambassadors now for ConsenSys, and we're training them on how to kind of move from that lurker role to the more engaged. And you can see like down here, Raid Guild, another popular DAO. They have some really quirky roles in their community. But like a lot of it is to drive people to feel accountability and feel rapport, like in the space. And so like we're trying to drive people to again, like going to the first quote that we saw on the deck, we want to help people help other people. And so we're working really hard on, how do we get folks in our community to really help each other instead of, it coming directly from us. So that's really, that's how we see support. And how, if you're building a community, you should really view it too as you can support your community for a very long time, but at some point, if it starts outgrowing itself, you're gonna have to really evangelize your people to take on your core principles, to take on, any like frequently asked questions, or just culture, or just like personifying the community. You want to package that and put that into a bunch of people, and have them own it. As we see with, this screenshot here with Metacartel, any one of these folks could tell you what Metacartel is. And that's what you want to do with community. You don't want one person telling everyone what the community is. You want the new person that's been there for 2 weeks to tell the next person exactly what's going on. And so it takes a lot of time, but it comes down to one thing, it's communication, and we have a lot of tools that we can do that with today. The way some of us could see it and went through, we're kind of privileged in the sense we get to see all this cool stuff every day, but the way we could imagine communities working in the near future, we're already seeing this happen, but a lot of decentralized coordination, delegating governance, so like decision making, and even quicker feedback loops. So there's a cool project. We'll start with feedback loops. It's a cool project called Orbit. It's orbit.love. Shout out to Robbie on Devro. He's been working really hard on integrating this with our community. But it's essentially that the model of the roles that I mentioned previously. So coming from observers to participants to contributors to advocates or evangelists. That's how we view communities. Like, how do you drive people towards the center of what we're doing? And Orbit model was able to package this up in a repo on GitHub, and into a nice fancy dashboard. So if you wanted to integrate Orbit into your own community, it's open source, and so you can essentially track your community in a bunch of different community channels, from like Discord to GitHub to blogs to discourse. You're able to track and see how engaged they are. Are they observing? Are they engaging? Have they contributed something? And we've been doing this in open source for years, where you're, someone's a contributor or a maintainer based on how much they're, if they've gone from starting the project to opening an issue or opening a pull request, to actually maintaining a feature or answering questions in the bug or in the fixes, having that kind of coordination and conversation. But there's other ways that people are finding we can connect the dots and see who's being activated. And yeah, looking through Orbit, like if you have a chance to check it out, it's pretty cool. We there's folks that we are seeing in the community that just kind of flying below the radar, but when you dig into the data, you can actually see that these people are contributing on different ConsenSys channels, from Meetup to GitHub to social media, and we're not recognizing them, we're not patting them on the back, and we're not giving them any shout outs, and really making them a part of this community and putting them on a pedestal. And so this is a really good tool for us to identify who those people are and really recognize them. The other would be like decentralized coordination. So we're seeing DAOs that are managing treasuries, and essentially through voting. Right now the applications have been really just allocating funds to different projects that they see fit, and voting on who's a part of the DAO, who's not a part of the DAO. We've seen cool DAOs like Pleaser DAO, where they collectively decided to pool funds together, purchase an NFT for I think $500,000, and they all have split ownership in that. And the DAO's one core role is to just to decide on purchasing that DAO, on that NFT, and they'll probably end up deciding on if they sell it or not. But it's that kind of coordination that's between like 10 to 20 people, all done through your command line or this interface with your MetaMask wallet. it's quite incredible to see that, you can make decision making much more efficient. It's decentralized. You're not going to at some point we won't require like a central party to help us coordinate decision making. We can just vote on things and it happened. And it's pretty cool. And there's projects like Snapshot or Cybele.org, where we're seeing governance on like the full technical roadmap, or grants programs and liquidity pool like structure and DeFi. We're seeing a lot of like, it's really cool to see in Web3 that a lot of the founders, recognize themselves as the inventor, and over time we're going to see these projects essentially decentralized completely. And it's really interesting to see how that community will end up leading an entire company and or project. The legal, I think, will be kind of sticky, but from the software standpoint, it's actually really interesting to see how governance is playing a role in new community decision making. The last portion is responding to your community. So in Discord, we have a lot of data on the engagement we're seeing. We can even see how much time people are spending on voice channels. We can see how much traction we're getting in specific channels, and so there's a pretty good deal of insight. And you can come to some conclusions. If your membership's up but the activity's low, then you're probably not responding to questions in a quick enough time. We're probably not posting enough. If we see that there's a large amount of people in one channel versus the other, that's probably a UX problem. We probably have too many channels. There's a lot of conclusions you can derive from data. And so it is important, whatever community you're setting up, have a way to measure that engagement. I've done Slack communities where it's a lot easier. You just can track how many members you have. You can see the engagement. You can see the new members. There's dashboards that you can use with GitHub if your project's very software oriented and doesn't care too much about diving into the chats. Like, there's ways to measure your GitHub growth over time, which it's tricky, but you can do it. I think it's called Gecko Board, I think, is one of them. And then I think it's really important. This is more of just a cultural aspect of open source and of community, but solving issues in the open, whether it's chat, GitHub, your forums, it's super important. One, it's efficient. Once you answer a question in these, at least if it's indexed, you can refer to it later. You can create conversation through this. I would say the Ethereum magicians and EIP, the people behind EIPs is like just phenomenal. What kind of conversations they can thread and create this like organizational memory for newcomers to the space for as long as these sites are propped up. So it's really cool to see how people are creating these feedback loops and how quick we're responding to these feedback loops. But it's really important to build, measure, learn, and track how you can grow your communities even better. I think we have enough time. So here's just
do we want to take a pause or just to see if there's any questions here? I had a question I put in just up so we can absorb all the stuff you're saying. Actually, was thinking a little. I was going to chime in about, so I don't forget about the, I think another trend that popped up out of last year is that I was thinking, meetup.com is a common place that people were building communities and getting together, because you're saying you have to find a central location to actually have conversation and plan events and do all that stuff. So, but that was a lot of that was offline. It was like a way to kind of meet up offline. And we actually have a Biddle community that runs using Meetup. But then I noticed that kind of forced us to find ways, thanks, Simon. Find us ways that, digitally we can kind of bring people into the community, but also that makes it much easier to track, and also look at the analytics of the experience, which is nice. But I do think the main thing is really, and kind of what we're trying to do here at ConsenSys with DevRel, is that you really want to identify through those analytics, but also being in the field, like you mentioned,
Oh, yeah.
is identify and empower our evangelists. And then for us, we call them ambassadors. But those are the leaders in the community. We want to identify those leaders, and then we make sure that they have the resources to then replicate. And a good community manager or leader, if you want to be one, will do just that, because it's just too much work, and you want it to be organic anyway. But yeah, I think that's. I was going to say, I think a community manager is the equivalent of a good team leader, as well as a good party host. I see you as a party host, right? Because you're the one who, like, everybody comes in the door and you're like, you're not sitting there like handing all the drinks and doing the DJ. You're like, someone comes up to you like, hey, and then you make the things flow, right? And so you're just like making sure everybody has a great time, so
I've got a funny story about that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think that's probably because you're meant to spark the convo. You're not supposed to hold all the conversations, right? And you're also meant to identify the strengths of people and leaders, and then essentially connect the dots for people, or connect people to people, right? So yeah, what's your story?
Well, I was gonna say, no, it's you're spot on. Like, community is you're constantly putting others in the spotlight, and or putting their thoughts or opinions on the spotlight. So yeah, it's quite no, it's funny because in college there was this girl who I was organizing like events in college, and they mentioned like, oh, you're gonna be a great like event organizer, like for your career kind of thing. And I was like so offended. I was like, I'm not gonna be a party organizer. But now looking back, I like literally am. So
that's a compliment.
I know.
Yeah, because what, Matt, the other thing is that a good party host, I mean, everybody loves the party host, right? Because we're creating the space to have the party, and we're creating this awesome experience for everybody to just show up and be able to like, do their thing. So we're creating that. And so we also we tend to, like you said, also be developers, or also have the passion of whatever that group's about. So we have knowledge and expertise in that area too, but we're in the mix with you, but also we're super approachable. So that's what you want to be as a community manager, right?
100%. And you've been one yourself, so you know how it is.
I know how it is. I actually enjoy it. Yeah, I still am with you.
Yeah. No, it's it's a fun thing to be a part of.
My question to you, Matt.
Oh yeah.
So
What's the question?
Okay, so I'm curious what you'd say. So how do you know if you should start a new community, or if you should just join a popular existing one?
Yeah, great question. It depends. It depends if you're doing it for commercial purposes or if you're doing it for fun. Usually, if you're doing it for fun, again, it's like it has a lot to do with just how much time you want to put in, and even yourself, like how bad you really want it to be on its own. So like for commercial purposes, most likely you'll end up creating your own. But for, let's give an example.
When you say commercial, are you saying brand wise? If you have a brand, you want to create your own, because obviously you can control the brand messaging.
But there's been several times where I'm like, oh, do I want to create a meetup, a community in my local city, or do I just want to join one and like support?
Right.
And so like for that, it's like, well, I'm just gonna go join and support one. It's like a lot easier. I can just like help kind of own some of the leadership of that and help kind of fix the culture or maintain the culture, whatever it be. But if it's for commercial purposes and you're like building a community around a brand or around a software, most likely you're going to create your own community.
But you could tie it into other bigger communities.
Yeah, you could. Like, we have plenty of bridges. We created these bridges via API and bots on Discord. We're talking to other developer communities.
Discord's great.
We do a lot of cross promotion. Like, we exist in a lot of other communities as a ConsenSys organization. But it's it's up to the person, and it's up to really like the bandwidth. It's up to how strong is the existing community. Like, if it's weak, you might as well just start your own. Was the culture bad? Like, there's a lot of questions you can ask about that.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's what the answer kind of was what I was thinking. Basically, if you already if there's something that you're interested in and you think is missing, there's not enough representation, then
Yep.
create a group. But understand, like, do your research first, because like low hanging fruit, if something already exists, just hop in, maybe become a leader in that group, because there's a lot of work in growing. It's like a garden, growing a community, right? But if there's totally nothing out there, create that group if you really have that passion, because if you build it, they will come. But also from a brand perspective, it's a tough one, because you're kind of on the fence. You do want to say, all right, where are the people at? Because like creating a new community requires, hey, come on over here, right? So there is that kind of balance between, like, that's why we do those bridges, like you call it, which is, we have our own ConsenSys community, but then we are also in the other communities where everybody's already at, to say, hey, you know, we also got a party over here. So it's like, you have to walk that line, right?
Yeah, the last thing I'll say, and then I'll jump into this user story we have, is like Ethereum's a prime example for me. I'm obviously biased. I'm very bullish on Ethereum the whole time I've been in the space. I'm sure all of you are as well. That's why we're here. But the community is unmatched. Like if you go to DevCon, you go to these like Ethereum events, it is just it just feels like the whole package. You know, the developers are just incredible. Like the amount of collaboration and coordination is just prime, and like there's without doubt, like there's a reason we have like the largest developer community in terms of blockchain protocols. And I just think it'd be a heavy lift to really try and you know, mimic that. So like to that point, in terms of communities, I think that's a huge driver for why folks end up building on Ethereum, is because, like, you know, community. They can just kind of attach their new community on top of Ethereum, and it's just a lot less friction than, you know, creating your own.
More existing support, more confidence in the fact that this is not going to go away, and that this is a growing technology. Yeah.
Well, because if you build on top of Ethereum and you're like, you know, a DeFi product, for example, like automatically you have like these Ethereum code of conduct like under the hood. Like, you know, people step in from like, you know, one Ethereum project to the next, and you know what you're getting. At least I do. Like I know, especially if I know some of the founders, I'm like, oh, they're, you know, I know their culture. Like I know it's not gonna be anything new. Like everyone's very collaborative, and there's unicorns all over the place. Like
you know what to expect.
You know what to expect. So it's refreshing. So that's that's the point where I'm like, I would just join that community. It's like there's a lot more things going on. Anyways, great question. I'm just gonna dive through this real quick. I'll do a very high level. This is a good friend of ConsenSys, PG, and he's close with Robbie on the team. They had a cool interaction, and, you know, credit to Robbie, he put this together a while ago, and we were trying to explain what we were doing for community at ConsenSys. And you know, just high level, what happened was, you know, he posted in ConsenSys Discord that he was new. He mentioned he had a DApp idea in mind, but he was new to software development, kind of getting into DeFi, getting into Ethereum. And Robbie kind of dove in and just started feeding him some repos, some links, helping him out with like building this first DApp. And he was super thankful for that. And he actually, well, I'll let you read this post, but like he was working like odd hours to essentially learn Ethereum. And oh, I missed another slide. Oh man, but yeah, there's one more slide where essentially we got him to the point where he was pushing code to GitHub on the ConsenSys repo, and we were able to essentially, you know, bring him fully from like a lurker to a someone that was engaged to a contributor. And like he's obviously new to software development, but like his first project was in the Ethereum space, and it's really, really cool to see that we've created this engagement. He's still active to this day. We like created the slide, I think like 3 months ago, but he's been on every single one of our build with ConsenSys calls we do in Discord, and he's, you know, super engaged if you look at the chats.
It's the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, it just goes a long way when you when someone reaches out for some questions and you create a relationship with them, not just answer a question and that's one off. There's something special about really being like, oh, what are you about? Like, why are you here? How can I help? What can I do to get out of your way? And so, yeah, there's one example, but we have several examples where we're just, it's pretty cool. We get paid to make friends and turn them into Ethereum developers.
some awesome, like there's like some great ideas out there too. And it's just great to see how we can help facilitate such good innovation here, you know?
Yep, 100%. And that's where I'll leave it. I have some homework for folks. If they, if you are building a community, you're just trying to think about community, there's just some good questions to ask yourself. I'd also go through the Lean Canvas or the Minimal Viable Community, the Community Canvas. I'm also always free. If you want to, reach out to me, I'm happy to help.
Yeah, jump to that last slide, Matt, if you can.
This one?
Yeah, perfect.
Sweet.
Yeah, thank you so much, Matt. Yeah, we are close and good timing. But yeah, if there's any questions that you guys, I know there's a lot of information, good information, but please reach out to Matt on Slack. As he mentioned, I'm sure he'll be happy to deep dive into any of these subjects. And yeah, of course, please join us on that Slack channel so that we can keep you up to date on everything with the event. And if you're inspired, maybe you can hack out an idea around community. Maybe
build a DAO.
Yeah, there you go. Build a DAO during the hackathon. Something you can, hey, the hackathon deliverable can even be just a sketched out idea. It doesn't have to be a fully coded MVP. That's pretty ambitious. It's 5 days. So we want to see what ideas kind of, come out of like, maybe thinking outside the box around some of these concepts. One last thing I wanted to kind of ask you, Matt, is so I totally agree with how you're saying, like, really the most important thing for building a community is first setting those community guidelines. It sets the expectation of what to expect when you're participating. But also our job as community managers is to really pay attention to the conversations and just identify and empower those evangelists, those leaders that bubble up, and then help them connect and then evangelize and then grow the community with us. And then finally, acknowledgement. Acknowledge those leaders frequently and when relevant, because that keeps them inspired, right? So yeah, I love that.
The last, what I'll summarize with is, if you're building community, it's really important to, spark the flame, like pinpoint your people, get them talking. Then you want to stroke the fire. You want to fan this thing out, get people talking, get them activated.
About the topics of interest, right? Yeah, the good stuff.
Yep. And, you want to listen and figure out how, what your culture is as a community. And then lastly is you want to pass that torch. You want to figure out how you can get others to become leaders in your community so that it's not, it's not an audience. You want a community, not an audience.
Absolutely.
So that's what I'll leave you with.
Awesome. Well, we are at the hour. Thank you so much, Matt. This was really great. Thank you for another great workshop as usual. Again, this is available for replay and we'll post it on Slack. But thank you everyone for joining today. And we hope to see you on the next one. And we hope to see you in the hackathon. So thank you again. And thank you, Matt. We'll see you next time.
Awesome. Thank you, Shay. Thanks, everybody.